Alright, crew, let's break down chapters 10 and 11 of Walden, your boy Thoreau's ultimate self-help manifesto disguised as a pond-side diary. Imagine Thoreau still chilling in his little cottage, vibing with nature and dropping philosophical gems like he's the Socrates of the woods. These chapters, Baker Farm and Higher Laws, are all about Thoreau getting deep into the human experience, dropping some truth bombs, and reflecting on how we live versus how we could live. Get ready, because this is about to hit like your favorite anime's mid-season emotional arc. So, chapter 10, Baker Farm, kicks off with Thoreau wandering through the countryside like he's on a fetch quest. He comes across this guy named John Field, an Irish farmer who's hustling hard but not really getting anywhere. It's like John's stuck in a never-ending loop of bad RNG, grinding day after day without much reward. Thoreau rolls up to his house during a rainstorm, chats with him for a bit, and gets a front-row seat to the struggle. Now, John's situation is pretty bleak. The guy's trying to make ends meet, but he's trapped in a system that keeps him in survival mode. His house is run down, his crops aren't doing great, and his family's barely scraping by. Thoreau's like, dude, what if you just quit the game? Stop playing by society's rules, simplify your life, and find a way to actually enjoy it. It's classic Thoreau advice: ditch the grind, embrace the simple life, and stop worrying about what society says you have to do. But here's the thing, John isn't buying it. He's too deep in the struggle to see another way out. Thoreau tries to sell him on the idea of living off nature, eating wild food, and basically adopting a minimalist lifestyle, but John just shrugs and goes back to his sad, rainy farm. It's like trying to convince someone to switch to peaceful mode in Minecraft when they're too busy fighting mobs to even consider it. Thoreau leaves feeling kind of bummed because he knows John's going to keep grinding without ever finding true peace. It's a total you can lead a horse to water moment. Now, chapter 11, Higher Laws, is where Thoreau cranks up the introspection and gets all philosophical on us. He's been talking about nature this whole time, but now he's diving into what it means to be human, like, what's our deal, and how do we balance our primal instincts with our higher aspirations? It's deep stuff, but Thoreau's got a way of making it hit home. First, he gets into the whole man versus beast thing. He's like, okay, so we've got these animal instincts, hunger, survival, the occasional urge to throw hands, but we've also got this higher consciousness that lets us think about stuff like morality, art, and the meaning of life. It's like he's describing a Naruto-style internal battle between your inner beast mode and your enlightened sage mode. Thoreau's all about finding balance, letting your primal side exist without letting it run the show. One example he gives is about eating meat. Thoreau admits he used to be all about it, but over time, he started feeling like it didn't really vibe with his higher self. He's like, sure, meat tastes good, but do I really need it to survive? Nah, I'm good with beans and wild berries. He's not out here preaching hardcore vegetarianism, though. Instead, he's just saying, maybe think about your choices and whether they align with the person you want to be. Thoreau also talks about hunting, and you can tell he's got a love-hate relationship with it. On one hand, he totally gets why people do it, it's thrilling, it taps into that primal instinct, and it's part of how humans have survived forever. But on the other hand, he feels like hunting pulls us away from our higher potential. He's like, yeah, it's cool to flex your survival skills, but maybe there's more to life than just chasing the next meal. It's like he's asking, what kind of character are you building, one that's all about the grind, or one that's aiming for something greater? Then Thoreau starts talking about discipline, and this is where he really leans into his inner sensei vibes. He's all about self-control, whether it's resisting the urge to eat meat, staying chill in stressful situations, or just not getting caught up in society's nonsense. For him, discipline isn't about denying yourself joy, it's about making sure your actions line up with your values. He's basically saying, be the main character of your own story, not an NPC who just reacts to whatever's happening around you. And here's the twist, Thoreau doesn't think humans are supposed to completely ditch their animal side. He's not about suppressing who we are, he's about integrating it. He's like, yeah, you've got instincts, and they're not bad, they're part of you. But you've also got this incredible ability to reflect, create, and connect with something bigger than yourself. Use both. It's like he's describing a perfect build in a game, balanced stats, no wasted points, and a playstyle that works in harmony with the world around you. By the end of chapter 11, Thoreau's message is pretty clear, being human is complicated, but that's what makes it awesome. We've got the raw power of nature inside us, but we've also got the ability to rise above it and chase something more meaningful. Thoreau's not here to tell you how to live your life, but he's definitely encouraging you to think about it, like, really think about it. What are you chasing, and is it worth it? Are you living in line with your values, or are you just following the crowd? So, yeah, chapters 10 and 11 of Walden are basically Thoreau's guide to leveling up your life. He's out here reminding us that we've got choices, that balance is key, and that maybe, just maybe, we could all benefit from stepping back, reflecting, and reconnecting with what really matters. It's deep, it's poetic, and it's surprisingly relatable, even if you're not living in a cabin or farming beans. Thoreau's like the ultimate life coach, but instead of charging you for a seminar, he's just writing it all down for anyone willing to listen. Alright, y'all, let's dive into chapters 12 and 13 of Walden, where Henry David Thoreau keeps serving his nature-loving, philosophical vibes. In these chapters, brute neighbors and housewarming, Thoreau is in peak thoughtful dude in the woods mode. He's out here talking to animals, watching battles of epic proportions, okay, and wars, but still, and prepping for winter like he's in survival mode in the long dark. So buckle up, because Thoreau's about to take us on a wild ride of existential thoughts, quirky humor, and some solid advice about living your best cabin core life. Let's start with Brute Neighbors, where Thoreau basically becomes Snow White but in a much cooler, more introspective way. He's chilling in his cabin, surrounded by nature, when he decides to focus on his neighbors, not the human ones, though. Thoreau's squad is made up of animals, and he's observing them like a biologist who's also trying to figure out the meaning of life. First, he's got this chill woodchuck friend who's just vibing, eating grass, and living its best life. Thoreau watches it and thinks, man, this woodchuck is so unbothered. Maybe we should all be a little more like this guy. Honestly, relatable. Then things get spicy when Thoreau notices a full-on ant war happening outside his cabin. Imagine the most intense battle sequence in your favorite anime, explosions, epic music, dramatic slow mo. Now shrink it down to ant size. That's what Thoreau's watching. Red ants are throwing hands, or mandibles, with black ants in what he describes as a fight to the death. He's sitting there like, this is wild. They're tiny, but they're going all out like it's the final boss battle in Elden Ring. Thoreau doesn't just watch the ants like some casual observer, though. He goes full philosopher mode, reflecting on how this tiny war mirrors human conflict. He's like, dang, even ants can't get along. Are we all just destined to fight over nonsense? But he doesn't stop there. He starts wondering if humans are really any better than ants when it comes to priorities. Like, are we just out here hustling, fighting, and stressing over stuff that doesn't even matter in the grand scheme of things? It's a big mood. But it's not all ants and existential crises. Thoreau's also vibing with birds, squirrels, and other critters, seeing them as part of this big, interconnected world. He's low-key jealous of how simple their lives are, no taxes, no drama, just living in the moment. He talks about a loon, basically a fancy duck, that he tries to approach, but the bird keeps diving underwater and popping up somewhere else, trolling him hard. Thoreau's chasing it like a gamer trying to catch a rare Pokemon, but the loon's like, nah, bro, you'll never catch me. It's hilarious and kind of profound because Thoreau realizes that the loon is just out here doing its thing, completely free and untouchable. Goals. Now, Chapter 13, Housewarming, is a bit of a switch up. Thoreau goes from watching animals and pondering life to getting practical and prepping for winter. He's like, alright, summer's been fun, but now it's time to get serious. It's giving major Stardew Valley energy, gathering supplies, making upgrades, and getting ready for the next season. His first big project? Upgrading his chimney. Thoreau's out here flexing his DIY skills, building a better setup to keep his cabin warm. He's all about that self-sufficiency life, and honestly, it's kind of inspiring. Who needs a contractor when you've got determination and a pile of stones? But it's not just about staying warm. Thoreau's chimney project is another chance for him to reflect on life's deeper truths. He's like, building this chimney is kind of like building your life. You need a solid foundation, the right materials, and a willingness to put in the work. It's classic Thoreau, turning even the most mundane tasks into a metaphor for living intentionally. And let's be real, he's not wrong. Sometimes, chopping wood and stacking stones is exactly the kind of grounding we all need. Speaking of chopping wood, Thoreau also gets super into firewood in this chapter. He's obsessed with it, like it's the rarest loot in a game. He talks about the different kinds of wood he uses, how they burn, and the satisfaction of splitting logs. It's giving hardcore lumberjack vibes, but for Thoreau, it's more than just a chore, it's a connection to nature and a way to stay present. He even geeks out about the sound of chopping wood, calling it a musical and cheerful sound. Who knew firewood could be this poetic? As winter gets closer, Thoreau reflects on how the seasons are kind of like life stages. Summer is youth, vibrant, carefree, and full of energy. Winter, on the other hand, is old age, quiet, introspective, and slower paced. But instead of being bummed about the cold, Thoreau's hyped. He's like, winter is the perfect time to reflect, to slow down, and to appreciate the beauty of stillness. It's a total plot twist because most people dread winter, but Thoreau's out here embracing it like it's the next big adventure. He also gets into how nature prepares for winter, and it's low-key inspiring. Animals are stockpiling food, trees are shedding leaves, and everything's gearing up for survival mode. Thoreau's watching it all like, dang, nature really knows what it's doing. Maybe we should take some notes. He's all about living in harmony with the seasons instead of fighting them, which feels pretty radical in a world that's always rushing to the next thing. By the end of these chapters, Thoreau's message is clear: life is all about balance between work and play, simplicity and complexity, nature and society. Whether he's watching ants go to war or stacking firewood for winter, he's constantly reflecting on what it means to live intentionally. He's not saying you have to live in a cabin in the woods, though he'd probably love it if you did, but he's definitely encouraging you to slow down, observe the world around you, and think about what really matters. So, yeah, chapters 12 and 13 are peak Thoreau. He's out here turning ant battles into life lessons, chasing loons like a nature ninja, and prepping for winter like a pro. It's funny, it's deep, and it's full of moments that make you want to pause, step outside, and just be for a while. If nothing else, it'll make you appreciate firewood a little more, and who doesn't need that? Thoreau's like the chillest, wisest anime protagonist you've ever met, and he's just trying to help us all level up. Alright, let's talk chapters 14 and 15 of Walden, where Thoreau keeps dishing out his chill, woodsy wisdom but with a bit more spice this time. It's like he's in the final stretch of his cabin arc, wrapping things up with a mix of deep thoughts, cozy vibes, and subtle flexes about how much cooler nature is than, like, anything else. These chapters, former inhabitants, and winter visitors and winter animals, are kind of like Thoreau's love letter to the past and present creatures that make Walden Pond feel alive. In former inhabitants and winter visitors, Thoreau's vibe shifts a bit. He starts by reminiscing about the ghosts of Walden's past. No, not literal ghosts, this isn't phasmophobia, but the people who used to live and work around the pond. He's like that one friend who loves lore in video games and goes, "Yo, did you know this spot used to be a blacksmith's forge? And this old cabin?" Total NPC backstory vibes. He talks about a guy named Zilpha who once lived there and made potash, which is basically old-school chemistry for soap making. Then there's this dude, Cato, a former slave who planted a walnut tree nearby. Thoreau's all in his feelings, thinking about how these people lived such different lives but left their mark on the land. It's kind of like finding an ancient Easter egg in a game and feeling oddly connected to players from decades ago. But it's not just humans getting the spotlight. Thoreau also has a revolving door of visitors during the winter, some of them human, some not. One of his regulars is a woodcutter who pops by for deep chats and some good ol' axe-swinging camaraderie. Thoreau's like, this guy gets it. He's simple, honest, and lives close to nature. Basically, he's the kind of NPC you always stop to talk to because they've got solid side quest energy. The woodcutter doesn't need fancy stuff, he's just here for a good fire and a good vibe. Thoreau's low-key jealous of his no-frills lifestyle. Now, Chapter 15, Winter Animals, is where Thoreau goes full-on National Geographic host. He's out here observing the local wildlife like it's a live-action nature doc, complete with dramatic commentary. The cold might have scared off some of the summer critters, but the winter squad is still going strong. Thoreau starts with the squirrels and rabbits, who are basically running the woods like a tiny furry mafia, scurrying around and stashing snacks. He watches them like, y'all are way more prepared for life than most humans I know. Then come the foxes, who Thoreau sees as the ultimate stealth operators. They're out here hunting, dodging traps, and staying one step ahead of everything. He's basically describing them as woodland ninjas, and honestly, it tracks. Foxes are the rogues of the animal kingdom, smart, sleek, and always up to something. Thoreau's so into it that you half expect him to start following one like a gamer trying to unlock a secret animal companion. Of course, Thoreau's not just watching animals for fun. He's also reflecting on what their behavior says about life and survival. He's like, these creatures are out here thriving in the middle of a frozen wasteland while we humans complain about a little frost on the windows. Maybe we've got something to learn from them. It's classic Thoreau, always finding the deeper meaning, even in a fox track in the snow. The real MVP of this chapter, though, is the owl. Thoreau absolutely loves owls, and it's not hard to see why. They're mysterious, wise-looking, and basically the sages of the animal world. He hears one hooting at night and gets all poetic about how it's the perfect soundtrack for his winter evenings. To Thoreau, the owl isn't just a bird, it's a whole vibe, a symbol of the quiet wisdom that comes from embracing solitude. If Thoreau were alive today, he'd probably have an owl avatar on Discord and drop random deep quotes in the chat. But Thoreau doesn't stop with the cute or majestic animals. He even pays attention to the crows and chickadees, who are out here grinding through winter like champs. He's like, these little guys are tough as nails, surviving on scraps and still managing to look cheerful. It's like watching a scrappy underdog team in an anime where even the smallest character shows insane resilience and heart. Thoreau's respect for them is off the charts. And let's not forget the ice itself, which Thoreau treats like a living thing. He talks about the way it cracks and shifts, creating these epic, otherworldly sounds that echo across the pond. He's totally geeking out, comparing it to thunder and music. It's like nature's way of flexing its power and artistry at the same time. Thoreau's watching all this, thinking, man, the natural world is so much cooler than anything we could ever create. Throughout these chapters, Thoreau's message is pretty clear. Winter isn't just about survival, it's about appreciating the beauty and resilience of life in all its forms. Whether it's an ant, a fox, or a human chopping wood, everything in nature has its role to play. Thoreau's out here reminding us to slow down, pay attention, and learn from the world around us. He's like the wise elder in every anime who's always dropping cryptic but life-changing advice, except instead of a bamboo staff, he's holding a hatchet and a journal. By the end, you realize that Thoreau's not just talking about animals or winter or the people who used to live near Walden Pond. He's talking about connection between the past and the present, between humans and nature, and between survival and meaning. He's challenging us to look beyond our usual grind, to see the world through fresh eyes, and to find the beauty in even the harshest seasons. So, yeah, if you're ever feeling stuck or disconnected, maybe take a page out of Thoreau's book and spend some time watching the squirrels. They might just teach you something. Alright, let's talk about Chapter 16 of Walden, the Pond in Winter, where Thoreau gets all poetic and zen about the frozen Walden Pond. It's like he's unlocked the winter expansion pack for his nature-watching adventure, and he's absolutely vibing with it. Imagine him standing there, bundled up like a medieval knight ready to battle the elements, but instead of swinging a sword, he's swinging a pickaxe at the ice. It's equal parts chill, literally, and deep. So, Thoreau kicks things off by straight-up marveling at Walden Pond's frozen surface. The dude is obsessed with this pond, and winter just gives him a new excuse to geek out. He describes the ice as this giant, transparent crystal that reflects the sunlight like some next-level RTX graphics. He's basically treating the pond like it's an open-world game environment, wandering around, checking out the details, and appreciating how nature nailed its textures. Thoreau's all about those peaceful aesthetics, frozen water, crisp air, and the occasional sound of ice cracking, which he describes like it's the earth stretching or groaning. The guy can make even ice sound like it's got a personality. But Thoreau doesn't just stay on the surface. Nah, he's all about going deeper, literally and figuratively. He grabs an axe and starts chopping through the ice like he's mining for rare loot in Minecraft. He's trying to measure the pond's depth, which is something he's weirdly into. He's out here like, how deep is Walden Pond, really? Spoiler alert, it's pretty deep, but not infinite. It's just deep enough to remind Thoreau that nature's got layers, like an onion, or Shrek, depending on your vibe. While he's hacking away at the ice, he starts talking about how the pond isn't just a pretty backdrop. It's like a mirror for the universe or some kind of cosmic symbol. Thoreau gets super philosophical, saying stuff like, the pond is the eye of the earth. He's out here acting like he's cracked the Da Vinci Code of nature, finding meaning in every ripple and reflection. It's a little intense, but also kind of inspiring. Like, maybe the next time you see a puddle, you'll think, is this just water, or am I staring into the soul of the planet? Thoreau's not the only one interested in the pond, though. Some local workers show up to harvest ice blocks from it, which is basically old-school refrigeration tech. These guys are cutting giant chunks of ice, packing them up, and shipping them to distant places like, I don't know, a 19th century DoorDash for cold drinks. Thoreau's watching all this and thinking, yo, this ice is gonna outlive all of us. It'll melt in some faraway city while we're back here in the woods, vibing. He's weirdly fascinated by the idea that a piece of Walden Pond is going to travel the world, like it's a message in a bottle, but way colder. Of course, this is Thoreau we're talking about, so he doesn't just leave it at cool ice, bro. He starts reflecting on how nature connects everything, like how the ice from this tiny pond is gonna touch lives in places he'll never see. He's all about those big picture thoughts, reminding us that even the smallest things can have a massive impact. It's giving major butterfly effect energy, but with ice cubes instead of wings. By the end of the chapter, Thoreau's just standing there, soaking it all in. He's completely in awe of how nature works, how everything's interconnected, and how even a frozen pond can teach you about life. It's like he's leveling up his introspection stat every time he takes a step outside. So, yeah, the pond in winter is Thoreau being peak Thoreau, geeking out about nature, chopping ice, and dropping existential bombs like he's the Socrates of the woods. If nothing else, it'll make you want to pause your life for a second, go outside, and just appreciate the fact that you're part of this wild, beautiful world. Maybe even grab a pickaxe and see what you can uncover. Alright, let's dive into chapters 17 and 18 of Walden, where Thoreau really starts wrapping up his woodsy saga with some major introspection and final vibes. These chapters, Spring and Conclusion, are like the season finale of his one-man wilderness show. He's stepping back, taking stock, and hitting us with some final boss-level reflections on life, nature, and what it means to really live. So, chapter 17, Spring, kicks off with Thoreau watching winter clock out and spring clock in. And let me tell you, this man is hyped for spring. Like, he's out here catching every tiny change in the woods like he's watching a live-streamed patch update for his favorite game. The ice on Walden Pond starts melting, the snow is dipping out, and Thoreau is straight up geeking over how the whole world seems to be waking up. He's got main character energy, wandering around like, wow, nature is really putting on a show just for me. The way he talks about the ice breaking up is next-level dramatic. He describes these cracks and creaks as if the earth itself is stretching after a long nap. And when the water finally starts flowing again? Forget about it. Thoreau's practically cheering from the sidelines like it's the Super Bowl. He even gets poetic about mud, yes, mud. He's watching dirt thaw and bubble like it's the most fascinating thing ever, and honestly, it kind of sounds like ASMR for the soul. Thoreau's takeaway? Spring is a total glow-up for nature, a fresh start, and a reminder that life always finds a way to bounce back. Then he zooms in on the little things, like the way the grass starts poking through the snow or how the birds come back, chirping their hearts out like they've been unmuted after months of silence. He's especially into these tiny streams of water that carve paths through the melting snow. To Thoreau, these streams aren't just water, they're proof that even the smallest forces can shape the world. It's giving major nature's got hands energy. But the real MVP of this chapter is the animals. Thoreau's watching frogs and birds like they're his favorite Twitch streamers, and every little move they make is some kind of cosmic life lesson. He's like, these frogs are out here hopping back into life after hibernating for months. If they can do that, what's stopping you from chasing your dreams? He's all about that nature as a metaphor for life grind. Oh, and let's not forget the pond. Thoreau's been obsessed with Walden Pond all book long, and now it's leveling up in his eyes. As the ice melts, the water gets this glassy, reflective quality that has him absolutely losing it. He compares it to an eye that's finally opening after being closed all winter, which is low-key poetic. He's feeling super connected to the pond, like it's his IRL Zen garden. By the time we hit chapter 18, Conclusion, Thoreau's ready to drop his final words of wisdom. He's like that wise mentor in an anime who's about to disappear into the sunset after teaching the protagonist everything they need to know. But instead of handing us a sword, he's handing us some deep existential truths. First up, Thoreau reminds us that life is short, so stop wasting time on stuff that doesn't matter. He's like, why are y'all so obsessed with chasing money and status when you could just, I don't know, live? He's all about keeping it simple, appreciating the little things, and focusing on what really brings you joy. It's the ultimate disconnect to reconnect speech, and honestly, it still slaps today. He also drops some advice about following your own path, no matter what people think. He's like, yo, march to your own beat, even if it's weird or doesn't make sense to anyone else. It's classic Thoreau, always hyping up individuality and self-discovery like it's the final boss move in the game of life. He even says something about how the universe will fall into place for you if you just follow your truth. It's giving major Hunter x Hunter follow your own path vibes. Then Thoreau takes a moment to reflect on his time at Walden Pond. He's not out here saying everyone needs to ditch society and live in the woods, but he's definitely encouraging us to take a step back and rethink what we're doing with our lives. He's like, I live simply, and it made me realize how much extra noise we all put up with. You don't have to live in a cabin to find peace, but you should definitely figure out what your version of peace looks like. One of his mic drop moments comes when he says something like, the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. Translation, most people are low-key miserable because they're too scared to break free from the grind and live authentically. Thoreau's like, don't be that guy. Go live your best life before it's too late. It's intense, but he's not wrong. Finally, he wraps up with this epic metaphor about how life is like a stream. He's like, if you paddle against the current, you'll struggle. But if you go with the flow, you'll find your way. It's classic Thoreau, taking a simple idea and turning it into a full-blown life philosophy. By the end, Thoreau walks away from Walden Pond with no regrets. He's ready to rejoin society, but he's bringing all the wisdom he gained from his time in the woods. It's like he completed the ultimate side quest, leveled up his perspective, and now he's heading back to the main storyline with a fresh mindset. So, what's the takeaway? Thoreau's out here saying life doesn't have to be complicated. Slow down, appreciate the world around you, and don't be afraid to chart your own course. Whether you're sitting by a pond or just chilling in your room, there's always something to learn if you're paying attention. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find your own Walden Pond, whatever that looks like for you.